Hello, everyone. Welcome to this panel on the inevitability of the cloud and multi-cloud. I'm Philip Carnelley, and I'm an industry analyst and consultant based here in London, working in the areas of big data and analytics for IDC, which is an international technology advisory firm. So I'm delighted to be joined for this panel session by Mark Kitson of Capco, and Peter Zhegin, if I pronounced that right, of Sistema. So welcome, guys. Perhaps you could just introduce yourselves as well, please. Mark, perhaps I could start with you.
Phil, thanks for the introduction. Yes, as you say, Mark Kitson, working with Capco in London. Capco consults with organizations in financial services primarily. My particular role is in the data practice, so very excited about the cloud as one of many exciting new technology levers that are forcing people to change the way they think about data. And yeah, looking forward to the discussion today.
Brilliant, thank you. Peter, say a bit about you.
Thank you, Philip. Hi, Mark, and guys who are watching us right now. I'm Peter. I'm a venture partner at Sistema, and it's a venture firm. We invest at two layers, basically the application layer, and typically we back something that has a strong data science component there, so interesting apps with data science. And another layer is data infrastructure, databases, maybe some data science tools, these kind of things. So that's my perspective on cloud and on some other elements of the stack.
Great, thank you. Well, Peter, perhaps I could start by asking you. You've been looking at infrastructure as well as data science and the applications layer. I mean, how do you see the cloud developing? Are the companies you invest in, very much focused on cloud solutions, or is they just using, cloud for the app dev part rather than the deployment and operations? What do you see there?
What we see across portfolio within the fund and across my tiny angel portfolio as well, that I would say the startups, the early stage startups, maybe who are at the A stage or a bit early, for them, cloud is like inevitable, it's native thing. So if you talk with someone who does databases, whether it's a Kraken or some our portfolio companies like QuestDB, they say our customers expect us to be cloud agnostic and to be ready to cloud, to be ready to be containerized, to be ready to switch to another cloud, etc. So for them, I would say it's already reality. It's not a gimmick. That's what they.
Okay, right. I mean, from my perspective, I went to say this earlier, but we've done quite a bit of research and talking to technology users around Europe, and by and large, they said that probably only about 25% of their data is really truly on the cloud. The majority is in hybrid systems, part on-prem, part in the cloud. Now, interestingly, on the panel I was on earlier, David Richards from One Disco was saying that he thinks that hybrid cloud will die out quite soon, if I can paraphrase him that way. We will have multi-cloud, so people are using different cloud solutions and arbitraging between them, if you like, to get better price or performance. But I was wondering, Mark, I thought maybe you could talk to that, because you're kind of working with the financial services. I was talking to a guy from a Nordic bank this morning, and he was saying that, for them, cloud has all sorts of regulatory and governance issues. So what are you finding? How do you see that? Sort of it offers agility maybe and scalability, but different kind of risks.
It does. It does change the risk landscape. I think people are attracted to moving data to the cloud for the elasticity of the compute and the storage and the pricing that's associated with it. So they're paying for what they need to when they need it. And also, I think the risk profile, the idea that single points of failure are reduced, I think is also very attractive, as long as your applications are built to handle that. But as you say, in financial services, the focus of regulation is significant. Increasingly, if you listen to Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, talking, he's very keen to make sure that in future, financial services don't represent a risk to society. So when you have a failed migration of technology, that stops people from being able to withdraw cash from cash points or to exchange their holiday money, that sort of event should happen less and less. So I think, yeah, it is something that is at the moment putting the brakes on migration to the cloud in financial services. But our team is working very closely with all the cloud providers and the banks to try and set standards to allow that to happen.
Interesting, thanks. Actually, I should have said, all those out there listening to this, guys, if you want to ask a question of the panelists, I've got the messaging window up here. Do feel free to put something in the comments or in the questions or the message panel. And maybe you could let us know what you think. I mean, is cloud, is hybrid cloud going to disappear very quickly? Do you think multi-cloud? Do you see people are you just focusing on one single cloud in what you're trying to do? I think that'd be quite interesting to hear from the people listening to this. If you could give us some comments and questions, that'd be brilliant. But in the meantime,
Phil, I'd also like to invite them to I guess argue with the point that cloud is just your data, someone else's tin. There is a truth to that at some level, but I think for those of us who deploy fast on cloud platforms, I think there's a lot more to it. Being able to push buttons and get stuff to happen at scale and at speed is a significant attraction. But if there is anyone who feels that we're missing something magic in the cloud, other than it just being someone else's tin that you can push buttons and pay on demand, be interested in hearing views on that in the narrative as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I hear people say that that the advantages are about time to value and things like that, because it's easier to spin these things up, and do new applications. Again, the guy I was speaking to this morning from the bank said that they were starting to use a cloud data warehouse, if you will, for a not obvious reason, but it was about permissions and allowing people to access data across the organization. He said it was much easier than the systems they'd had previously, even though it was all kind of essentially in-house. They could share data for analytics and for data science across the organization much easier with the cloud solution, which is not the immediate thing that you would think about.
I would add here, if you guys don't mind, here is the data warehouses that you mentioned, Philip, like snowflakes, that kind of stuff. They really enable data sharing, and we see that startups started to emerge that do kind of reverse ETL. So what they do, they basically use these huge lakes or warehouses and try to direct data from there to appropriate systems, whether it's a CRM system or something else. And they want to make this data easier available for other and multiple business units within a company. I guess it's a very powerful trend. It's just emerging, because obviously sharing data within organization and in the future maybe between organizations, it's not here yet, but I would say it starts to happen.
Interesting, thanks. Yeah. One other thing I wanted to sort of explore, Mark, I know you're working with the EDM Council on data issues and governance, I think. But perhaps you could explain that to us. What's the role of the EDM Council and what's their sort of relevance to this discussion?
Yeah, the EDM Council does an awful lot of things. They're most famous for a data maturity assessment for enterprises that is called DCAM. But recently, what's happened is a number of clients I work with have effectively said, look, they desperately want to use the cloud more to do the sorts of things we've just been describing. But the cloud providers were all over the place in terms of access control, being able to demonstrate provenance, being able to provide certain levels of security, encryption, etc. So what the EDM Council is doing in the area of cloud, and if anyone wants to Google CDMC as a subset of the EDM Council work, you'll find out a lot more about what the EDM Council is doing and all the cloud providers are addressing there. But effectively, the world of cloud opens up new opportunities, but it opens up new risks as well. So that example you talked about of a bank putting all of their data onto a data warehouse in the cloud raises issues around privacy. It raises issues around the sovereignty of data. There are certain regulations that say you cannot put, for example, data about Singaporean clients in locations other than Singapore without explicit controls in place. So those are issues that need to be addressed in the world of cloud, and it becomes a lot easier to get it wrong when you're just putting this into some unknown, well, in theory, unknown location. But reality is, the tin is somewhere. It's just you need to find out where it is and make sure that you're not breaking any rules unintentionally.
Interesting. Peter, are you your companies that you're investing in, are they working in the financial sector a lot? I mean, perhaps I'm sort of biased being in London, but I see a lot of startups being focused on fintech.
Some of them have some exposure to financial sector, especially one of the databases, yes, that I mentioned. They do time series. They work with time series data, and that's a bread and butter of financial organizations. But we have, I would say, quite industry agnostic portfolio. They work with multiple various industries.
Okay, yeah, because I was just wondering how much you're seeing this as the governance and data sovereignty and those kinds of things as a sort of bit of a barrier to what they're trying to develop.
I've seen that in some other industries, mostly healthcare, where the data needs to be, what kind of data needs to be, what are the rules of keeping and accessing this data. So I guess it's not purely financial sector. There are some other sectors, and then we can go sector agnostic and to look at the political landscape, where increasingly as East and West, etc., and multiple countries want to have service in the locations. So I guess it's very multiple.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, very interesting. Thanks. I think we're kind of starting to run out of time then now, but I wanted to ask you, do you think hybrid cloud will remain the dominant model for the foreseeable future? So people will keep a lot of data on-prem, or will they, will pure cloud win out within, the next 2 or 3 years, maybe 5, sort of where do you see it going? I mean, from your different perspectives, one's more sort of startup data, sort of cloud first. I'm thinking of Peter and his companies there, whereas in financial sector, there's definitely all sorts of reasons to keep things on-prem. So what's your view, maybe 5 years out, where are we going to be then? Peter, I'll start with you.
My intention is to say that we will be in the cloud world. However, I need to make a huge disclosure. When we talk about the startups that are cloud natives, they're really tiny compared to behemoths, compared to oracles of this world. So if you look at a startup database and where they rank at DB engines, maybe they will be like 150 something. And there is 4 or 5 or 10 dominant players that may not support cloud or support it to a lesser extent, right? So I would say there will be a certain segment where cloud will dominate. But if you look at the picture overall, I guess the combination, the hybrid thing will remain. But
okay, I suppose what I was thinking was that a lot of them were providing services that run on the big cloud architectures like Azure and Amazon and things like that, really. So, that they would still be targeting that for even their big clients, because they'll be putting their data maybe in Amazon or what have you. But I take your caveat, but I think we're about to run out of time. So I would like to get Mark's view on this as well.
I think the proportion will shift. It'll take a lot before the kind of on-prem option gets killed off completely, but the proportion will shift over time.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I have to say our survey data sort of implies it's going to be quite slow and gradual, but I was looking to see if you thought we were being too cautious there. Okay, I think we're out of time now, according to my clock, so I will wrap up there. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time, your input. Very interesting, and I hope the listeners have all thought it was very interesting as well. And with that, I'll say cheerio and goodbye.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Mark.